Welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and on this channel, we're exploring anomalous phenomena. So, if you're new to this channel, thank you so much for checking it out. I have been making this for 1 year now. Last episode was my 1 year celebration, and I took a week off to just think about what I'm really doing and what I have to offer that's different from what's already out there. I'm going to be time stamping all of these episodes from here on out. So if you're already watching these episodes and all caught up on everything that has come before today, feel free to skip the intro and go right to the meat of this episode. But if you're new, I just want to give you an idea of what you can find on this channel and what you can expect from me in the future. So basically, what I've been doing is I've been researching, especially UAP, UFO history and ET contact and alien abduction phenomena. I've been digging into the psychic studies that seem to be part of this whole thing in terms of remote viewing and other consciousness phenomena. I've been reading and researching various theories of reality. And really, I'm just following what makes the most sense to me. And I'm zooming into the kind of the vision that seems to unite all of these strange and anomalous things. So, this is my curated offering to you. It's me reading and watching and listening and gathering data. And unlike other podcasts where it's all about interviewing people, I haven't reached that level yet. That's something that I might be interested in the future. But right now, I'm really trying to build out just a big picture understanding for myself and for anyone else who's interested. So I'm gathering and I'm reporting back. And what you can get here is basically a lot of really good information along with just me and you hanging out and having coffee kind of vibes. So you're getting me and you're getting what I'm interested in, and you're getting updates on what's going on in the news when it comes to UAP, UFO, and I think you're getting a really comprehensive view of this topic. And what I'm doing is I'm really zooming into what makes sense to me and not getting lost in all the fluff and confusing kind of edges of this topic. I'm really zooming into what I think matters. So I'm kind of clearing out all that extra junk for you so that you don't have to get spun out or lost in all of the kind of edges of this fringe topic, because I think we really need to understand what's going on here. And I think it's time for us to get really real with ourselves and each other and just have a perspective on this as we move forward, in our political decision making and in how we organize ourselves in terms of education around this topic, how we progress on our spiritual paths in regards to these things, and just how we understand our community, our global community, and what matters to us when we may find ourselves faced with something that would affect everyone. So, and perhaps already is. So that's what you're going to get here. And today I'm really excited because like I said, I took a week off. And during that week, I was thinking, what am I even doing? Do I need to keep going with this channel? I know I'm going to keep doing my own research, but do I even have anything to say? And so I kind of just let it simmer for a week. And then, of course, a series of synchronicities kind of bubbled up and threw me right back into it. And a question that I had in my mind was answered. So, what that question was how is it that non physical influences can have an impact on physical matter reality? And basically, what is going on when that happens? And this question came because I'm rereading Robert Monroe's first book, Journeys Out of the Body. And Robert Monroe is the founder of the Monroe Institute in Virginia. And this is a place where out of body experiences have been studied for, I think, over 30 years now. It's been a long time, and they're still going strong. And Robert Monroe in this book is telling the readers about a lot of his introductory experiences to the anomalous. So he's recounting his beginnings in practicing out of body travel and some of the experiments that he did, and also just some of the things that he was learning about at that time in his career. And it's my second time reading the book, and it is good to go back and read certain things more than once because you always pick up new information. And this time around, I was really struck by how his early experiments out of the body seemed to be having an impact on physical matter reality in a way that I hadn't quite noticed before. So let me give you an example. He talks about doing these little journeys where he would go and visit a friend or try to appear somewhere where other people could, where he could kind of bring back evidence of that experience. So he talks about like showing up in a place during an out of body journey, and then the woman who was in physical matter reality in that place kind of looking up and seeing him, and then he left or he went back to his body, or a kid saw him, or um he told a story about how he visited a friend and he pinched her. He was always pinching people. I'm like, what a silly experiment. But he would actually go up and pinch someone. And then later, in actual reality, when he's back in his body, he went and spoke to that woman, and she had an actual bruise where he pinched her. And the bruise is what really caught my attention because, we've talked about this before with these abduction cases where people are in kind of a dream state. It's nighttime, they're taken from their bed, they're run through all these different tests. The aliens are doing all these tests on them and giving them shots and taking samples. And when they wake up again the next day, they often have physical manifestations of that experience on their body, like bruises, cuts, or different markings. And up until now, I've been thinking, well, I always try to think of the most skeptical explanation for these things. And I'm thinking maybe this is a phenomena of the human mind, and we know that the mind has an impact on the physical body and that we can actually influence our health, for example, with our thoughts. So maybe these dreams or these mental experiences are so powerful and wild and strong that they're just causing the mind to basically tell the cells to manifest these symptoms. It's kind of like the computer is telling the body what to do, and that computer is the mind. And so I've kind of been leaning in that direction this whole time, but I've always wondered, is there something else going on? And is it possible that other dimensions of existence or non-physical realms can actually penetrate the physical realm or have an influence on it or have an impact on it? And what does this mean? And what does this mean for our understanding of reality and these various reality frames that we seem to be living within, and they seem to be nested or connected in some way? So in my research this week, I came across some really fascinating new scientific evidence that helps to answer this question. But before we get into that, I want to give you some recaps of a couple of the other videos that I've been watching. So let me go ahead and pull up my notes here. So right now, today is August 2nd, and we've just passed the 1-year anniversary of the House Oversight Committee UFOs UAP public hearing. So you remember last summer we talked about that. I have Shocks Talks episodes that recap the entire hearing. You can find it online. I always have links in the description box below. So if you're just listening to this, just remember that if you want to go ahead and look at your phone or computer and look at the description box of these videos, this is where I've time-stamped, so you can click on whatever title you're interested in hearing about and just skip to that section. And you can also find all the links that relate to everything I'm talking about in each episode. If you want to go back and listen to my other episodes, just remember that season 1 is all about the UFO history, and season 2, the psychic season, is branching out more into like the psychic layers of this topic and more about experiencers and contact and consciousness studies. So those are organized as playlists, and you can just put them on and listen to every episode in order. I did build out this whole channel to be chronological, where we are building a foundation of understanding and then going into some of the more mysterious parts of this topic as we go through the seasons. So please do go back and listen to season 1 and kind of build up your understanding from there, because that's how I've designed this channel. So again, last summer, the July 26, 2023 hearing was super exciting for the UFO community, and this is where we were all introduced to David Grush. That's the former intelligence officer who mentioned the biologics. We met David Fravor and Ryan Graves, these pilots who are part of these not mass, but major sightings that occurred that multiple people saw, the Tic Tac sighting, and we heard about this cube with a sphere inside of it. So this was all just sort of like stirring up the public awareness of this topic in a really big and interesting way. And it was like last summer was huge for UFO and UAP news in general. We had NASA coming out making statements, we had the Mexican hearings. And so we're 1 year out from that. And of course, every summer is the anniversary of the Roswell incident. And there's always a big Roswell festival and conference. I've never gone to that yet, but I do want to check that out sometime. I always go to Contact in the Desert, or at least I've gone for the last 2 years. That's my new thing, and that's my favorite conference. I feel like it's really well-rounded and it brings the big names. And this past Contact in the Desert was huge. We had Kelly Chase showing up. We had Whitley Strieber. Jeremy Corbell was there. George Knapp was there. George Norrie. Richard Dolan is always there with Tracy Garbett Dolan. We had Alexis Brooks there and Yvonne Smith. And it was just absolutely fascinating and such a great experience. Travis Walton was there this past year, and just so many others. So you'll continue to hear little bits and pieces of things that I learned while I was at that conference. It's a really intense couple of days of nonstop lectures and so much information, and I did learn a lot both times. So I want to read you a quote from the New Paradigm Institute's newsletter. Now, Daniel Sheehan, who is also at Contact in the Desert, is the lawyer who is really involved with the legislation around UFO, UAP, and also just organizing so many different branches of study and preparation for the public dealing with this reality and learning to kind of process the information on a deep level and also be able to move forward and make new policies and systems and structures that help us to be able to navigate this kind of crazy new reality that we might all be faced with, and that some are already dealing with, and that some who have been dealing with this for years and years and decades. So that's Daniel Sheehan, and the New Paradigm Institute is the institute that he is a part of. And in the newsletter, they said, the testimony confirmed, and this is speaking of last summer's hearings, the testimony confirmed long-held suspicions that the U.S. government possesses recovered craft and biologics of non-human origin. Grush's testimony also revealed the existence of a UFO UAP crash retrieval program and legacy UAP programs embedded within unacknowledged government workflows. So we're just going to take a deep breath here and let that sink in for a minute. Last summer is when we really found out, without a doubt, that these programs exist. And this is really important because this is the part that deals with the Congress and the new UAP Disclosure Act. So all of this information that came up at this hearing was kind of setting the stage for these amendments that were introduced into the National Defense Authorization Act last summer. and they went through a process where they were basically gutted and all of the strong language was removed and they lost all of their power. Now, what was this amendment trying to do? It was trying to create a system that would cause all of the secret programs, private programs, and government programs who have crash retrieval technology, information, biologics to have to come over and hand everything over to the Congress for oversight. It's basically just kind of like stirring the pot and dredging up all of the secret stuff that has been buried and hidden and needs to be understood and overseen by our government and the people. So this, like I said, was completely picked apart, and now we're in a moment in time where this amendment is being reintroduced. So I posted some articles in the links below for you, but basically there's a great article on Liberation Times, and let me go to this article. Let's see. I'll just go to my link that I put in my notes here. So the Liberation Times article is called U.S. Senators Push Again for Groundbreaking Law to Unveil Non-Human Intelligence. This is written by Christopher Sharp. It was published on July 14th, 2024. And I'm just going to read you a couple little blurbs from this article. So, two influential U.S. Senators, Mike Rounds and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, have revived their Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena UAP Act, which would directly involve the next president in a process that could reveal Earth is being engaged by advanced non-human intelligence. This process could reveal that the U.S. government and defense contractors possess these entities' craft, which are, according to the Act, capable of transmedium travel, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic speeds, and positive lift. Okay? So basically, if this act is passed, the president would appoint 9 impartial citizens with Senate consent to a newly established UAP Records Review Board. And I can't help but noticing it's 11:11 right now. We're going to talk about synchronicities a little bit today too. So basically, this thing is, it's been proposed. We're waiting to find out more. I'll keep you updated on this. I do recommend reading this article. I've also linked another article. I've also linked for you the actual proposed amendment. You can go and read that entire amendment and what it really means and what they're asking for. It's got power again, and they're asking for a lot. So we're back where we started in a way. And the interesting thing right now is that last time everyone was able to go in and really focus on this and kind of pick it apart. But right now, the political climate has shifted because it's election time and a lot is going on. We had an assassination attempt of Trump. Biden stepped down, and now we have Harris in the running for the Democratic candidate. And so everyone is focused on the election. So we'll see what happens with this amendment. And I don't know exactly when we'll find out more, but I'll definitely keep you posted. There are different people talking about this political context and what it means for disclosure and UAP transparency. And I've linked for you a really interesting video that Richard Dolan posted on his channel. And that is on YouTube, and that's the Richard Dolan Show. And he really gives you a full presentation, slideshow presentation of exactly what's going on politically and why this year is not going to be the big disclosure year that some people originally thought it would be. There was talk of more hearings and more witnesses and whistleblowers coming forward. There was talk of October 18th being a really big, important moment for disclosure. And now there's just so much going on with the presidential election that everyone else in the community is taking the temperature and saying, you know what, we're not going to see big movements on this front this year. So stay tuned, more will be happening. A ton of work is still happening behind the scenes. There, in addition to this UAP Disclosure Act and amendment to the NDAA, there's also work being done to create more protections for whistleblowers. So that will help us in the process of having more hearings and getting more people to feel safe coming forward and talking about these special access programs and things that are going on behind the scenes. So we may be on a little bit of a hold for a couple months or so, but I think we're going to see some big stuff coming next year. And the ball is still rolling, and it's very, very exciting. Now, that's kind of the political side of it. And of course, there are so many really educated and powerful people doing really important work on that side of this topic, and it's exciting and interesting. But then we have what Kelly Chase and J. Christopher King recently called the DIY punk rock side of ufology, which I just love so much. And it's basically, civilians going rogue. It's just people and experiencers and scientists and researchers and entertainment people and creators and podcasters and writers doing their thing and finding their own way through this tangled web of information. And they think that that's the future of ufology. And I think we're going to have it all moving forward. I even just learned recently through the New Paradigm Institute that there is, for the very first time, a master's and a PhD program being offered by Ubiquity University on ET studies. And it just fills me with so much excitement because it just is one tiny step forward in legitimizing this field of study in a new way. And obviously the people that have been in it for a long time already understand, yes, this is legit, this is real, this is important. The secret programs, oh, they know it's legit, they know it's important. Tons of money is going to it, and it's been held underground in these compartmentalized programs for decades, like we've mentioned many times on this channel. But now we're seeing more public interest and more acceptance of this topic and more understanding when it comes to how important all of this really is. So I'm thinking about it. I mean, if I ever had the time and the extra money, I'd like to get a master's and a PhD and write a dissertation and publish a thesis about all of this. So maybe that could be a future path for me. Who knows? I did link the introductory video from Ubiquity University down below if you want to learn about their program and how they go about their coursework and accreditation and what they're offering. And it's just very exciting and interesting. So that's in the description box for you. Let's see, what else do I have in my notes? So on the topic of Kelly Chase, who is the host of the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast, a really great researcher and experiencer. She is stepping in once a month for Whitley Strieber to host his YouTube channel, Dreamland. I think it's called Dreamland. I always feel confused when I think of the name for some reason. But on Whitley Strieber's channel, there's already a community built. And of course, he's an experiencer and someone who has been in this for a really long time. And Kelly Chase and J. Christopher King are kind of younger and newer in all of this. So it's interesting to see kind of old guard and new guard combining forces and trying to make moves and, push forward into the next phase of all of this. And so they did an interview recently and mentioned that their new production company on Talkalypse Productions is going to be putting out, I think it's a small series, like a mini series, or maybe it'll be the season 1 of a series that will continue, but it's a documentary series, and they're going to be covering and kind of showing us two contrasting experiences, like experiencers that they have been in contact with through their experience groups who have very interesting stories, and they're going to be showing us those stories and digging really deep into it. So, in this episode where Kelly interviews J. Christopher King, and it's linked below for you if you want to listen to that whole thing, they start talking about basically the stories that they're going to be showing in these episodes, giving us a sneak peek, and also just talking about like what they're doing for this field of study. So J. Christopher King is someone that I actually got to come into contact with at Contact in the Desert. I didn't meet him directly, but I went to one of his experiencer groups that he hosted where you basically listen to different people telling their stories. And I also got to hear him talk a little bit. And I just realized like this is a really special person. This is a very genuine person. I'll have to double check on this, but I'm pretty sure I first heard him years ago on Stuart Davis's podcast, Artists and Aliens, or Aliens and Artists. And he's someone who grew up with anomalous experiences as part of his normal life, including like poltergeist and haunted houses and then little grays coming into his room and all kinds of other things. So what he kind of brings up for me is this fact that many people who have anomalous experiences are not just having one type of anomalous experience, but they're having all kinds of different types of anomalous experiences. And sometimes that makes it feel like a little bit muddier, or it's easier to discount some of what they're reporting, or it's easier for people to write them off and just say, well, they're just crazy, or they're just prone to like these imaginative thoughts, or just ways of dismissing it, because it's not like, oh, I just am, a businessman who saw one UFO and that's it. And so that must be more credible than someone who talks to dead people and sees ghosts and also is visited by aliens. But the more we all look into this stuff, the more we're starting to see that actually there's something going on here. And I feel super validated by it because I am an experiencer, and I started having anomalous experiences as a kid. So just let me give you a quick recap of some of the things that I've been through for context, and I'm sure you have too. And this is what I love about this whole topic. It's like when it first started becoming public and these stories started coming out in books and people who have gone through anomalous things, they almost felt like they got uplifted like as a celebrity, because it was like, oh, this is so special, it only happened to this person, or let's make a movie about this one, or let's have a cult following around this personality because, oh, they must be so special because this happened. But then over time, more and more people come forward, and we need to stop acting like this is actually special, because the truth is it's probably happening to way more people than we want to admit or even can think about or fathom right now. And listen, we're all special. Every human life is special. And I don't think it does anyone any good to make a celebrity out of these people. But I also understand that that's just how things work over time. And it was important to start there. And then as time goes on, we're going to have a new, bigger picture understanding. And we're going to realize like people with like psychic phenomena, or other consciousness anomalies, or awakening experiences, or people who have had contact or sightings. This is normal. This is actually most people. And actually, what's going on here is probably more along the lines of a total shift in consciousness for all of humanity, or could also be seen as a total shift in the reality frame itself. And this is what we're going to get into at the end of this episode also. So, for me personally, as a kid, I did see what I thought were little angels or fairies or orbs. I saw all kinds of other things out of the corners of my eyes, and like including shadow things and other characters and beings. I saw and heard. I had the hypnagogic sleep classic situations of hearing like a knocking on wood or a knocking on the door or hearing my name called out. So I always had visual and auditory hallucination type experiences happening throughout my childhood. I let's see, I had night terrors. I had different experiences where it felt like I was out of body, flying through the sky. I had different kinds of experiences in meditation where I was having telepathic communications. I assumed it was with God because I was a young spiritual kid in a spiritual community and I was supposed to be talking to God. So that's what I thought I was doing, but who knows what I was talking to. Probably different things at different times. Later in my life, in college, I had a really intense kind of half awake, half dream experience where I saw a whole scene play out and I heard it as if it was real, and later found out that what I had experienced was like some kind of an echo of the past. It was a real event that had occurred in that place years before I had ever lived there. So I got actual data to confirm that experience. Um, I've seen apparitions of all different kinds. And then I'm going to say something here that I don't usually talk about because a lot of the time I do kind of glaze over my own personal experiences and I tone them way down because I don't want to make this totally about me. But I am realizing that we all have to share a little bit of what we've been through to help build out this bigger picture. So there was a year in my life where I was just more involved with a lot of drug use and not sleeping a lot and having a really tumultuous time. And I was going through different traumas in my own psyche. And at that time, my anomalous experiences ramped way up, like shot through the roof. And I always wrote it off because, nobody wants to hear about stuff that happens when drugs are in the mix because it kind of discredits the whole experience. And then I've spent over a decade of just living clean and, living a very practical, grounded life so that I could give myself that sense of security and stability and like really start to parse out all the things that have happened in my life and make sense of it all. And now that I have that time and distance and perspective, I'm actually realizing a lot of the things that happened during that time in my life were real. And we'll talk about what real even means, but they were not just things that you can write off as just drug experiences. They were things that probably occurred because being in an altered state with certain substances or being sleep deprived and being in a different kind of mental processing state can actually increase the likelihood of some of these experiences for better or for worse. And I think that as time goes on, we're all going to start hearing a lot more about that. So people that have been in the shadows feeling shame, hiding because nobody wants to hear what you experienced in your time when you were on drugs or taking plant medicine or having some kind of, medical experience where medication induced, an out of body or an NDE or a visitation. You've felt ashamed. You've felt like you can't talk about these things because nobody wants to hear it. I think your time is coming. So keep on hanging on and, don't be afraid of what you know to be true. We're going to make more sense of all of this as time goes on. And we are all starting to recognize that, through the psychedelic studies that are happening and DMT studies and studies around mushrooms and ketamine, more and more people are starting to understand that these substances may actually be, in a way, a tool for transcending the physical matter reality and penetrating into other realities that are valid and real and not just fabrications of the mind due to a substance. So that was one little chunk of time for me that was just full of especially a lot of UFO sightings, alien visions and visitations, and other kind of strange, dark, occult scenarios. And I will have to continue breaking that down for myself as time goes on, and then maybe I'll be able to share more with you. But all of this is to say that J. Christopher King is someone who works with groups of people who are having a range of different kinds of experiences. And he is so kind and loving and open hearted that he's actually just holding space and listening to all these things. And this is very important because over time, as this data starts to accumulate, we can begin to see that there actually is a correlation going on, and that these people are not crazy and they're not making things up. And there's something to be said for the layers of experience that can occur in certain people. So I'm really excited for their new show that's coming out. And whenever I find out what it's called and where we can watch it, I will definitely let you know. But there was this quote that he said, basically, in terms of all these experiencer groups and what he's learning, he said, people may be gaining an expanded understanding of nature. Of nature. So it's not that, we talk about the supernatural a lot, but what we're actually learning about is what's natural, what's actually true. And because of our culture and society, we've kind of squeezed out that part of reality and we've denied it. But indigenous cultures and many other ancient cultures throughout time have always accepted the so-called supernatural and anomalous side of things. And now our Western culture and our modern culture it's time to get with the program, and that's exactly what's happening. He talked about how in this project, and Kelly is a part of the project as well, they're not editing out the inconvenient details. And we know this is something common. This happens a lot. Nobody wants to hear something awkward when it comes to this stuff because it's also bizarre already. So when it's like, oh yeah, this, I had this sighting, but also I had this weird tingling in my right pinky finger, and then this happened, and then that happened, and it's like it starts to sound weird. And so in a lot of these programs and podcasts of the past, people have just kind of edited it down to what they feel makes sense in the context of the time and what is acceptable. And these new researchers and creators are really pushing the boundaries, and they're coming at it in a whole new way. And it is absolutely refreshing and so inspiring and exciting because this is the path forward. This is how we're going to make sense of what's going on. And this is also how we take care of each other as people. We really, we hold space for the fact that just because we don't understand something doesn't mean there's not something to it. And it doesn't mean that it didn't have a profound impact on the person who experienced it. All of those things need to be honored. And it's also the only way we're going to make sense of all of this at the end of the day. So he called this the true, thorny, challenging complexity that often comes about, just talking about what they're sort of sifting through in their research. And they also mentioned that Whitley Strieber is an inspiration because of his lyrical exploration of the phenomena and his own experiences. And I love that they said lyrical because I mentioned to you in an episode before that Whitley Strieber shared a poem at Contact in the Desert about an alien kiss, how he was kissed by an alien. And we talked about how Kim Carlsberg also had an experience where she felt an alien kissed her, and it was kind of part of a communication and a little bit of a joke by these entities. But this kind of goes back to that Robert Monroe thing of pinching someone and leaving a bruise on their body. I've often wondered, like, these physical sensations, is there something to it? Is it just happening in our minds, or is it affecting matter? And that's what this new science is starting to uncover. So, moving on from the Kelly Chase interview, let me just see if there was anything else I wanted to mention there. Oh, one other really important thing that I find just so refreshing is that one of the witnesses who has a family history of anomalous things happening and precognition and psychic a lot of really like high, strange psychic activity, and also UFO sightings and alien visitation. This person who we're going to see in this series is a black man. And a lot of people think like, oh, why do these things only happen to like blonde white women? I've heard people say this. Or why is this all, like white people? And in my own personal experience, because I have a lot of friends of different ethnicities and have met many people from different cultures, different countries, speaking different languages, also just people around the United States, definitely multiple black people that I know that have had anomalous experiences of all different kinds. So to me, it's nothing new. I'm like, come on, people, everyone is having interesting experiences. But in terms of just where we're at in time and in the culture and in society, yes, we still have a whitewashed media. We still have problems with racism. We still exclude certain people from the conversation when it comes to these things. So it's very refreshing and positive and powerful that Kelly and J. Christopher King are, highlighting a black story and bringing that forward and helping maybe some of the older generations and maybe some more sheltered people to understand that we're all in this together, people. This is a human thing that we're all going through, and we need to listen to each other's stories. And on that note, there's also some special emphasis on the Native American communities in the final section of today's episode that I'm going to be talking about. So, this topic, as scary and strange as it can be, is also very uniting for humankind. And I think that is one possible positive outcome of all of this, is us all learning that we are not divided. We are people of the earth, and we need to come together in love and respect. And we do still have a lot of work to do culturally to repair the damage of the past. And we do have to acknowledge privilege, and we do have to acknowledge bias. We also have to recognize sexism is at play here. Political agendas are at play here. But at the end of the day, we are people of the earth, and we all have to come together to understand this phenomena, the nature of reality itself, and consciousness, because that's the beauty of it all. We are all united in consciousness. So I'm super excited for what Kelly and King have coming down the line. Let's see. What else do we have here? So they're talking a lot about the link between poltergeist activity and UFO and alien sightings, contact, and experiences. And, I talk a lot about Tom Campbell, the physicist who has a theory of everything that I like to refer to when I'm thinking about consciousness and the whole nature of reality. And in his theory, he often says that in these anomalous experiences, people may be encountering other consciousnesses that are similar to ourselves, free will awareness units, but sometimes we're actually just making contact with the larger consciousness itself, which has the capacity to take on different forms and communicate to us in any way that it needs to. So it could appear to you as your dead grandfather, it could appear to you as an alien or an angel or a demon, and that's all a part of your own learning. That's kind of like your business with the universe. So that is one possibility when it comes to a lot of this phenomena. But I'm always looking for evidence of when can we find out if it's something like us, other than us. And I think we're all getting closer to that as we begin to bring scientific sensor data into the conversation and into the study of these things. And this is what's exciting about this topic gaining momentum, is that more people with money and resources are able to join into the scientific exploration around all this, and things are picking up steam. So before I get to that exciting piece of science that I'm just dying to share with you all, I also want to talk about Alexis Brooks, who is the Black woman who I got to see at Contact in the Desert, who's a podcaster, an experiencer of an awakening phase in her reality, which is a lot like a Kundalini awakening. This can happen to anyone. You don't have to be a yogi. You don't even have to call it that. And often it is a shocking and disruptive experience in your life that kind of turns you on to a new level of existence and awareness. And guess what? This is happening to a lot of people. I've met so many people that have had these experiences themselves. You're probably one of them. And if you're not, you could end up being one. And it could be a really dramatic thing, or it could be more subtle. It's different for everyone, but it often includes a kind of a sense of purpose that downloads into your consciousness, heightened synchronicities, more anomalous experiences, more of a feeling of activation within yourself, a drive and a motivation to participate in reality in a way that you hadn't been participating before the experience, and all kinds of other things. It can have physical effects, mental effects. Very interesting stuff to dig into. You can do a search and a deep dive into Kundalini awakenings or other awakening experiences if you feel that this might be happening to you. There's a lot of resources to support you. But Alexis Brooks is someone who had this, and she tends to keep like one of the most open minds of anyone I know in the field who's doing this kind of research and study. So she talks to people about everything, anything and everything. And she talked in this episode that I linked for you below about the beauty in the pursuit of knowledge, and how the real reward in all of this is basically just the joy of self-discovery. And I love that, because a lot of times, Kelly Chase calls it the rabbit hole. Many people get turned on to these anomalous things and start kind of just diving deep into the unknown. And you may or may not get all the answers that you're looking for, but you do get to learn about yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. And maybe that's what it's all about. So that's something that Brooks brings up. And she also talked about the link between people's inclinations and the experiences that they have. So for example, let's talk about, and this is something that J. Christopher King was also mentioning. So I'm just like bringing this all together because it was kind of a synchronicity that all these things that I looked at had, were kind of lining up in a similar way, circling around the same questions. And it also tied back to what I've been doing in my own meditation and out of body practice and dream practice. So it's about tuning your senses and expanding your perception. So people that have these anomalous experiences, they tend to be experiencing reality in a different way than a lot of people all the time. So for example, some of us have those blinders on and we're just really focused in our practical reality. We're not thinking about everything else, and we're not even noticing the details of what's around us. A visual artist might be very tuned into the visual data of their experience, and they also might be more inclined to having visual anomalous experiences, so sightings, seeing things. A musician or a producer, or someone who does field recording, or someone who works in film might have a really highly tuned sense of the auditory environment. So right now, I'm in this room recording with the window and door closed, but I can hear a fan in the other room, because I am someone who is not only a visual artist, but I've also been involved in music and recording, and I've also been involved in dance and movement and somatic work and yoga. So I'm tapping in on all the different levels. So kind of what I've realized and what I want to share with you is that if you are someone who wants to be more open in terms of your perception, doing these practices like listening, awareness, presence meditation, body work, feeling into your body, visual art, recording and editing, these practices and these artistic expressions will tune your senses to a higher awareness, and they will open up your perception. And And so, as individuals open our perceptions and we gather more sense data and extrasensory data, we begin to have a greater awareness of the actual reality, the nature of reality. And then the other side of it is the scientific instruments that can be used in conjunction with experiences to verify the data. So that's where we're going to get into this Ross Coulthart interview on News Nation. This was published on July 31st. And this is an incredible interview. I linked it below and I highly recommend you listen to this. He interviews a man, Jim Segala, a PhD who worked with Hal Puthoff and also Bigelow. He was the Bigelow Science Advisor, and he was one of the scientists working on the Skinwalker Ranch. This is in the Uinta Basin, and this is a place where all kinds of anomalous phenomena occur, including but not limited to UFO sightings and contact experiences. So there's a whole series about this place. There's all kinds of information out there if you want to dig into Skinwalker Ranch, and there are other ranches and locations in that same area that have anomalous phenomena. Hold on one second. Let me just double check this. So this is northeastern Utah. That's what I wanted to find out, is exactly where is it located. So this is northeastern Utah. And for context, this is a place that is obviously land, ancient land. There's a lot of Native American association and sort of spiritual tradition of taking care of that land. And so within the communities of the Native people of that land, there are all kinds of stories that relate to the anomalous phenomena that, the new people who have come in and taken over chunks of that land are starting to experience all kinds of really intense stuff. And then they're kind of, by necessity, they have to collaborate with the Native communities to understand what's going on. And so that, as messy as that may seem because of the history of these places, it's also interesting and positive in a way because these people are coming together and working together. So the scientists that were studying specifically Skinwalker Ranch had a ton of they had tons of resources, money, and the ability to create special pieces of equipment, sensor data, and they set up a whole network of sensors. So what they were doing is they were monitoring a variety of signals: RF, gravimetric, gamma radiation, and microwaves. And this man Jim Segala, who is being interviewed on this episode, has a PhD in physics and an advanced degree in engineering, so he's a double PhD. He also recently published some of his studies, and what he did is he put sensors on the land near the homes where these subjects or experiencers were staying. They had over 35 people helping with this experiment. He said a lot of them were Native Americans, and he said that the Native Americans who had a direct connection, the indigenous people who were tied to the land and cared for the land, were the people that had the most experiences and the most interesting experiences, and also the most emotional descriptions of what was going on. So his collaboration with those people specifically produced the most interesting results. So what he did is these people were all staying in these different homes, and the sensor systems were set up, these networks that were measuring, like I said, all kinds of different things. And it was a blind study, so the people that are reporting their experiences are not aware of what the sensors are picking up until long after they've had the experience. So later they're given that information, but during it they're not given that information. And these people are basically, they're hearing things, they're seeing things, they're being visited by things, and then they would I had a dream, I had a sensation, and then I had this crazy feeling tingling all the way through me. And then I went outside and I saw something, and they're journaling it. And so they're submitting their data all into these portals, like these, databases, computer networks. And so they're like journaling and writing and doing recordings, and they're just pumping their data into this whole network. And then the scientific researchers who are monitoring the sensor data are gathering that and correlating it with the experiencer data. And for the first time ever, they have been able to prove that there is a physical, measurable effect on the environment at the time of these experiences. So this is the thing that I'm just blown away by and so excited to learn, because this is a step towards us understanding the meaning of non-physical entities, energies, craft, or other anomalous things sort of having an effect on our physical matter reality. And the effect is pretty dramatic, because not only are they picking up these different kinds of radiation and different waves, microwave signatures, they are also sometimes sustaining injuries during these experiences. So when people are being abducted, or when people are, coming into contact with a craft, sometimes it is doing something to their bodies. So this is very important for us to understand. And the effects that are being measured are in no ways insignificant. For example, let me find it here in my notes. It was... So the spike, like when a gamma ray spike occurs, it's not just a tiny spike. It is 22 times the normal level, the normal measurements, because these measurements are happening every single millisecond. So they're constantly recording. So there's like a base level activity, and then 22 times that base level is what they call a spike. So that's a big spike. And then with the microwave radiation, it is 10 times the regular level is what they're measuring. That's what they consider a spike. So they're recording that and they're also comparing these things with photographic and video evidence of sightings. So this is so important. We have to triangulate around these things. We have a human experience in consciousness, in the mind, sometimes with physical effects on the body, correlating with sensor data, correlating with video and photographic evidence of the craft. Now that's starting to feel real to me. That is not some kind of hallucination. That's not somebody's imagination. That's as real as anything else in our reality. So I think what it makes me feel like is that, like I said before, the reality frames that we exist within seem to be nested, and that we are in physical matter reality and non-physical matter reality is all around us. But I'm starting to think of it even different from that. It's not even like a separate Russian doll with a Russian doll inside of it. It's more like a gradient. And people in the New Age and spiritual communities have been talking about this for a while with 5D or, different densities of reality. And maybe they were onto something, and maybe the science is going to help us soon to be able to really make sense of what's going on with these various dimensions. And it's just so exciting. So I would recommend watching this interview. I have a lot of notes on it here. Just for context, the study that is being published by this man, Segala, he had so much data. He said thousands of cases, but if he didn't have all the evidence from every angle, he didn't really count it, so he has more information than is even being published. But what is actually going into the publication and what he's really focused in on is still over 600 cases of these correlations occurring. So that's a nice big sample set, That is not some dinky little study. That is a chunk of information to look at. So this is really, really exciting. So over 600 instances of situations where something was recorded on video or radar and verified by sensor data. There were also effects on people's bodies. So this is some really cool stuff going on, and yeah, one other interesting little tidbit about this study is that Ross Coulthart was asking, so is this technology available? And this scientist was saying, you know what? Yes, because so many people have asked for it. And people who are having anomalous experiences, again, have been told they were crazy for a really long time. They've been told that, you know, they're full of nonsense or whatever. And so he's actually created this tech in a way where people can purchase it online. I've linked that below as well. I was thinking to myself, it's got to be thousands of dollars, because even night vision goggles, military grade, are thousands of dollars. And a lot of high tech sensor equipment is extremely expensive and not really accessible to many people. But the devices that he is sharing and the tech that he's created that he's making available to the public ranges from like $55 units to like $300 to $400. So it's actually not too crazy. You could potentially buy 3 or 4 different kinds of sensor data equipment. And if you are someone who lives in a hotspot, or you're having lots of sightings, or maybe like a Chris Bledsoe type person who's seeing orbs all the time, wouldn't it be interesting to find out if when he's seeing orbs, there's also any kind of spikes in radiation or microwaves or other information that can be picked up by these sensors? So I think we're going to see a lot more coming soon when it comes to all of this. So on this website, the technology is called, the acronym is UPAS, UAPAS, and this just stands for, let me find it in my notes because I can't remember it in my brain. It is, MUPAS, sorry, MUPAS. Modular Unidentified Phenomenon Alert System. So it's just an array of sensors. And what he did is he said, if I'm going to provide this to people, I still want to be collecting the data on their experiences. So it's a little give and take. It's like, I'm going to give you this equipment, but you're going to give me the data. So if you buy his equipment, it's going to feed into a portal, and you can subscribe to that online portal for $20 a month, and you can like analyze the data and correlate it with your other, if you're going to do like the journaling or, you know, your own experiencer data in conjunction with the sensor data. But that's all going to feed into his study because he wants to get more data, obviously, which is smart, and that is scientific. So just some really cool and interesting stuff. So I know I rambled a lot today and I talked really fast, and I hope that it felt exciting and you got some good information. Again, all the links are below, all the different videos and articles and stuff that's going on in the government. And it is a really exciting time. And like we heard before, you know, the experiencers are going to be disclosure. So we really need to continue listening to each other and not discrediting anyone's experience, no matter how messy, strange, or inconvenient it may be. Let's just stand by and keep getting more information. Let's see what happens here. Even I need to learn to be less judgmental. I have a total tendency to snap into judgments about people's character, and you know, there's just so many things going on. We are still people, and people are messy. We have egos, we have different motivations, we have different belief systems, and all of this stuff is kind of influencing us. But the more we listen and pay attention, the more we can just sort of start to separate these different things out and zoom in on the truth of what's going on, what it means to us all, and what our next steps need to be in terms of really putting these pieces together, gaining that bigger picture understanding, creating systems in our society that support all of us, that keep us safe, that help us to go down the right path when it comes to understanding this. And you know, Something that I've been putting off from thinking about, but now feels even more important, is this potential future where we are all interacting with non human beings. What are we going to do? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to understand each other? We have so much work to do, and it's pretty exciting and definitely interesting. I will continue researching and bringing you the best of what I find. And I hope that if you liked this episode, you'll also check out some of my other playlists and other episodes, and we'll keep learning together. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.